Hello friends, I'm Brian, and this is Gizmo Board Games. It's the beginning of another month, so it's time to look back at what I did in June of 2024. Starting with the videos I released, in case you missed any, I did the look back into May of 2024, my new to me games that I played. So check that out. That's this video from last month. I then did a review of The Walking Dead Surrounded, a button shy game that's either just released or coming very soon. It was a Kickstarter, I believe. And then I talked about beer and pretzel games, just a little discussion of the games I have that I feel fall into the category of beer and pretzel games and kind of what makes up a beer and pretzel game. So check that out if you want a little beer and pretzel game discussion. I also explained kind of my rating system, the GIZMO, Gizmo rating format, what they stand for, and kind of how I come up with my thoughts on them, and kind of a little bit into the math about how they add together to make my overall rating. And then finally, last week, I did a game recommendation for every letter from A to Z, so check that out if you want some more recommendations of games to play that aren't in my top 15 necessarily. So those were the videos. What about the games I played? Well, June 2024 started out really slow, but I attended 2 conventions and got a lot of gaming in there. They weren't big conventions. They were just a couple small conventions here in Denver, Colorado. I drove up to those and played a good handful of games. The first one was the Play.con, Plaay.com, and that's a tabletop sports game mostly. They delved into some other games a little bit, but tabletop sports games, I did play some games there that I'd played for a long time, kind of the things that got me into the hobby. And I tested out a couple of demo games as well. I might talk about a few of them here in my honorable mentions. And then I attended the Button Shy convention in Denver just last weekend and played a bunch of new Button Shy games, as well as introducing some old favorites to one of my friends who went with me as well. And I didn't really touch on any demo games there, but I did look into peek into some of the demo plays they had going on and had a good time, and that's where a lot of my numbers come from. So when we get into my it's going to be top 12 new to me games from June, so it's been a long time since I've had a list this long, so I'll try to keep this video tidy. But we'll talk about the top 12 new to me games. A lot of those are going to be button shy games, but not all of them, as you'll see. So let's go ahead and talk about what I played. The stats. I played 40 total times, not counting a lot of the tabletop sports games. I just don't really count those, but I did play a good handful of different tabletop sports games at the Play.con that I just don't count as games played necessarily. I know some people might. I don't. I feel like if I'm just getting out a tabletop sports game, I'm just rolling through it. There's no winners or losers or anything. I'm just watching a game unfold in front of me, so I didn't count those. So I got 40 different actual board games played, card games, whatever. 19 unique games, and again, 12 plus some honorable mention new to me games that we'll get into right now. Honorable mentions. So the first one is a game that comes out later this year. It should be available from Play.con or Play.com, Plaay. It's going to be Draft Duel. It's a kind of a game where you're going to draft from a handful of cards, one card at a time, and they're going to be different high-skilled position football players that you might recognize if you're into football. And the concept of the game is much like fantasy football. You are drafting guys that you're hoping to score for you. You're not watching a football game play out. Instead, you're drafting the players that you want to see perform. And then over the course of 5 rounds, you're going to play one player, and they've all got card texts that are going to react based on the different attributes and players in play. And you're just going to try to score the most you can through a Thursday night football game, a Sunday morning football game, a Sunday afternoon football game, a Sunday night game, and a Monday night football game. So you're basically playing players into your tableau up to 5 times, and there's a press conference round too if you qualify for it, so maybe up to 6 times, and you're trying to score as much as you can from the players you have in your fantasy team. It's a neat little game. I really enjoy it. Look for it coming in October, I believe is when the expected date is. And another game I demoed there is from, I believe it's going to be Spicy Studios. Keith's son, the owner, creator of Play.com. His son's branched out and started making some card games himself. I believe he was actually involved in the draft tool too. But he's got a game, Cards with Shapes, a little party-style game where you're just drafting cards from the center display, and you're trying to get 3 similar shapes together, so that way you collect all of those shapes from the board, and then you're going to score what you collected at the end of the game. This game is in early demo stages and should hopefully be available sometime in 2025, so I won't talk on that anymore because it could change from what I played. So those are the honorable mentions I have, both from Play.con. Let's get into my 12 favorites new to me games from June 2024, starting with a button-shy, story-based, story-driven game, Time Travel and Entertainment Incorporated. This is a game where, again, you're just playing some cards in front of you, 3 cards in front of you, and they each have 4 words on them, and you're working to make a story with the other players around the board based on one of the words that are face up to you as it's your turn to make a story. And you're using that word, and you're trying to see if you made a successful use of that word in the story as judged by the other players on the table. And then if you do, you're going to roll to see if it is a success enough to advance, because you could still fail in the storyline and then have that card eliminated. It's kind of quirky, kind of goofy, not my thing. I'm not a story-driven player at all. I don't play, Magic, or not Magic, what am I talking about? Dungeons and Dragons. So this game was just way too loose, flimsy, whatever. I didn't care for it at all. I'm not a story-driven person, and that's all there was to this quote-unquote game. Number 11 is Championland Wrestling. This is a 2-player game where you're playing cards out of your hand. You're each going to have a deck of cards. It's just a 2-player game. I think I said that already. And from that, you're going to shuffle up your hand and display them out, and then you can only take the front card or the back card. So whatever's on the very ends of your hand, and play that down. And it's kind of a little guessing game against the one that's on the table as the active card. You're going to secretly lay one of those 2 from the ends of your hand down, and then your opponent's going to guess whether it's higher or lower or equal to the card that's face up in order to get a move in a wrestling match. And whoever gets 2 in a row that your opponent incorrectly guessed whether it's higher or lower, or if you're the person who guesses whether it's exactly equal and that's correct, you're going to get the quote-unquote point. If you get 2 back-to-back points, you're going to score in the round, and you play best of 3 rounds. It was an okay game. Not a lot to it. You just lay a card down and then guess higher or lower, and there's a little bit of strategy involved, but not much. It was okay. Again, not the greatest thing. Number 10, new to me game from June 2024 is Super Slopes, a button-shy game where you're taking turns drafting from a column of cards, a card to put into your ski slope, and it's going to score based on, after you're done, you're going to pick one of the ski lines basically to score, and you're going to score negative points if you hit Yetis. You're going to end your turn immediately if you run into a forest without being able to use energy, which you can collect along the route, because that can ignore Yetis and the forest, and you're just trying to get through a ski line. There are different symbols that can do different things and add points to your line as well, and you're just trying to draft the best top to bottom ski slope. Nothing too exciting. I think this was another 2-player game. I played it solo, and it was okay, but nothing spectacular. Just to draft some cards and put them in a line and hope that you score well enough. Number 9, new to me game is not a completely new to me game. I've played Rolling Realms before, but this is the first time I got into the new solo campaign mode games beyond the Realmiverse. So I'm going to add that here as a separate way to play the Rolling Realms game, because you are kind of building out a campaign a little bit of sorts, where you're going to choose randomly a couple realms, and then one you get to choose, and you're going to play them out, and each round has different scoring things you need to meet based on however the rules are going to change up. So it's adding rules to what already has a bunch of rules on each realm. You're going to play through a little bit of a mini campaign. I played this one a couple times, and it's all right. Like, again, because you've got to meet certain quotas, it's a lot like the original golf solo mode, but with a little bit more story to it and a little bit more of a flow, because you're going to keep certain cards in play and not be completely random every game. or have specific ones. I believe the golf course says you have to play with these exact specific ones, and they're all from the base game. And there's a bunch of expansions out now, so those weren't well built into the golf game as it was when it was released. So I like that this adds another way to play solo, but I don't think it added a whole lot to the game. You're still playing Rolling Realms and trying to meet some objective or other. Number 8, new to me game. This is another, I'll call it a demo, and I will do more coverage of this probably later in the week, sometime in the next week or so. I hope to get some kind of coverage out. But this is Soccer Blast Express. This is one of the new games that I played at the Play.con, and it's a quick version of their normal full game Soccer Blast. Soccer Blast is the full game where you play two teams against each other in a game of soccer or football if you're not an American. And that game takes an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours if you're not used to it, to play through a full-on 90-minute soccer game, especially if you're keeping stats and everything like that. Soccer Blast Express is another one of their express games that they've started introducing to speed up that gameplay. And it's coming out later this month, so again, I want to provide more full coverage. But Soccer Blast Express is a way to play soccer in an express mode. More to come on that. Number 7 is Championland Track and Field. I talked about Championland Wrestling earlier in the list that I didn't really care for because it was a lot of just guess higher and lower and hope for the best. Championland Track and Field, there's more strategy. Again, it's a 2-player game. And again, you're going to play with the deck of cards 1 through 9. But this time you're doing various track events. There's some speed events, some power events, I think. And I don't remember. There's 3 levels of events, low, medium, and high, basically. And you can play 3 of your cards face down to either an event or as an athlete in the event. You're going to eventually, at the end of the round, have 6 athletes meeting 6 events because you and your opponent are each going to play 3 events down and 6 athletes, so that's 9 cards each. And then you're going to see who scores better in each event. If it's a low event, you want to have the lowest card in the event. If it's a middle tier event, you want to be the one closest to that event number, 4, 5, or 6. And if it's a high tier event, you want to have the highest number. So if it's a high tier event, I've got a 9, you've got an 8, I win that event. 6 events, you're going to see who scores the most of the events, and that player is the winner of the track and field. I like this one more. It had a lot more strategy involved and some more really complex thinking because, again, you got to play 3 events and you can play 3 cards and only 3 cards face down. So whether you want to play athletes face down to not tip your hand towards what an event might be that you want to play later, or play an event face down, but then if you got to play an athlete face up to it, so if you play your 9 athlete to a face down event that you played earlier, then your opponent's probably going to know that's a high event. And again, you're going to play from either end of your hand, so you can't just play anything at any time. You got to think about what's still left in your hand that you can't quite get to yet. I enjoyed this one a lot more than the wrestling game. It's Championland Track and Field. Again, another button shy game. Number 6 new to me game from June was BOOoop. This is a Halloween take on the game BOOoop. It's a 2-player game. Again, I played this one with my daughter. Basically, your cat's jumping on the bed. First, your kittens, and you want to try to get 3 kittens in a row because those kids will graduate into becoming cats, and you win when you get 3 cats in a row. The trick is, whenever you place a cat, any cat that's adjacent already on the bed is going to be booped back 1 space further away. So you've got to kind of manipulate the board in the way you want to line up your cats so that way you can win, or play defensively to stop your opponent from getting their 3 in the row. So neat twist. That's General BOOoop. And then BOOoop, the Halloween version, adds a little ghost cat that'll move across the board in a direct line, and they will also frighten the cats away that they happen to hit. So you can pre-plan some more movement for every turn too using your ghost cats. We ended up not using the ghost cats a whole lot. I think 2 of the 6 or so games we played together, we actually put a ghost cat in play. The rest of the time we just played normal BOOoop. A lot of fun. I'm not super abstract player myself, and my daughter, I beat her every time because she just wasn't able to math out the movement, but we both enjoyed it for the plays we had until we kind of were like, okay, we've played this one a bunch and we'll probably pull it out some more. She's cat people. I'm now a cat people now that we have cats. So it was nice to get this game finally played. It was enjoyable plays. BOOoop. Number 5, new to me game for June 2024 is a game I'd been looking forward to for quite a while from Button Shy, and I just never got my hands on it because it's a 2-player game again, and I just have such a hard time with that player count. But going to the con gave me a chance to play those games, and that's why there's a lot of those 2-player button shy games on this list. And number 5 is Circle the Wagons. This is a game that plays kind of like Sprawlopolis a little bit, but you're putting 3 cards out as the goals that you're both trying to meet. This is not cooperative. You're definitely playing head-to-head. And then you're putting the rest of the cards splayed around them in a circle, and you're starting at one point and drafting cards somewhere in that circle. But for every card you skip, your opponent's going to get that card. And then you're adding them to your city in a way that they're adjacent to one another to try to meet certain scoring objectives for the most of the land types and the goals that are on display, usually based around the different icons that are on those cards. It's a nice, thinky puzzle game where you really got to plan out a strategy of sorts. We played this a couple times, and I'm really glad I got around to it finally. Circle the Wagons has been on my 1-2 try list ever since I heard that it was another solid button shy game, and I'm glad I finally got a chance to play it and now own it, so hopefully I can play it some more. Number 4 new to me game from June 2024 is a button shy game that I knew nothing about going into, and it beat the one I was most excited for, and that is Making Manhattan, another 2-player game. And again, you're drafting from 3 cards on the table this time, and each player is going to get a west side and east side of Central Park, and then build upper, middle, and lower Manhattan, basically. So you're going to draft 6 cards and place them into one of those 6 slots of, some imaginary tableau around your Central Park. And based on where you slot those cards and the iconography on those cards, you're going to score for the cards that you have built into Manhattan. So they've each got different scoring conditions based on where they are in Manhattan. And some of those rely on the placement of other cards. Others are just going to score straight points based on their placement, etc., etc. And not only are you trying to score the best you can, but you're also trying to maybe hate draft from your opponent because you know what their main objectives are, and you can kind of look over the card. I wouldn't spend a bunch of time trying to memorize what every scoring card they have, but you've each got in-game scoring cards that are part of your Central Parks, and you know what those are. So if they're trying for like the most skyscrapers, all you want to do is make sure they don't get the most skyscrapers, and you'll stop them from getting those points. So if there's a skyscraper card out there that could help you a little bit, but really hurt them if you draft it, you might draft that instead of one of the other 2 cards that you're kind of lukewarm on. So I really like this push and pull, another quick playing card drafting kind of tableau building game. I really enjoyed Making Manhattan. All right, let's get away from button shy now. Unfortunately, button shy games, they are what they are. They're 18 card decks. They pass the time, but they're usually not that involving. And so they hardly ever crack the top parts of my list. Unfortunately, I enjoyed all those plays, or most of those plays, I guess. But I just like more Euro-style games myself. So that's where we're going to start going now to an extent. With my number 3 new to me game from June 2024 is Ring Circus. It's a Devere game where you are drafting, well, not even drafting, you're purchasing cards or getting them from actions in your hand, and then you're going to play them out into your circus as performers, and you're going to use cards, money cards, to be able to play them. Money cards can also be played as the cheaper performers, so it's a kind of a push and pull of getting the big performers out and the little performers out, because the more you can get on your tableau, the more benefits you're going to have towards getting those in-game scoring cards into play, and maybe taking other actions because they've got ongoing effects on them. But you also might be covering up some ongoing effects. So like in my last game I played, I ended up covering a lot of my trains, and the trains are how far you can move around the board, because you're going to move from town to town and put on these performances to score points and collect more money from people attending the performances. And that's also going to drive the game counter, because every time somebody performs, the game counter is going to tick down closer and closer. There's 3 scoring phases as the train kind of crosses from section to section in the main city, and you're going to score based on your area control in those sectors. So there's a lot to think about in this game. Tableau building, managing your resources, being your cards as money. Because again, if you're spending the money cards, then you don't have them as cheap performers, but you need a bunch of those money cards to buy the better performers, which are going to help you score more at the end of the game. And you can only perform in the main cities if you meet the certain criteria of having the right main performers. They really are waiting for that certain juggler or magician or whatever to come out. So you've got to have that card in your tableau before you could even go to that town and perform. And then you can score based on where it is on your tableau as well, because the tableau is going to build from least performer to most performer. It's a lot of interesting thinkiness. I really enjoyed. I played this only solo. And so I'd like to play it with more players, because the solo mode was a little bit rough, because just kind of a lot of randomness. I had one game where they just drove the end game faster than I wanted, and I couldn't, build up to do anything. But it's a neat game. I like what DevVeer's been doing lately. They've had a lot of favorites coming down. So that's 3 Ring Circus. My number 2 favorite game from 2024, June 2024, is not my typical style of game, but I've heard so much about this. It's kind of basically Ameritrash, and I don't even really care for the IP that's based on. Mad Max is okay. I saw Fury Road, and that's it. I don't even think I've seen any of the originals. But this is Thunder Road Vendetta, which is basically Mad Max Fury Road, the board game, where you're controlling 3 cars, and you're kind of racing through this desert land with a bunch of hazards and cliffs and all kinds of things, and you can either smash them up and try to just take out your opponents, because everybody's got a chance to shoot an opponent. They end up right behind it at the end of the turn. Or you can just try to race and hope you're the winner of the race. But basically, you're just trying to be the last person standing or win the race, because as soon as the first person is knocked out completely, all 3 of the cards are off the board. Then that'll put the finish line out. So you can win by finishing first, or you can win by knocking out all your opponents. It was a fun, zany game. I don't normally like random dice rolling games, but in this game, I guess it's not super random, because your card dice, you're going to roll ahead of time and then place them out. Each turn you take, you're going to place one onto an action. Most of that action is just going to be move a car that many number of spaces. But there are other side actions you can do as well with the dice. And then you're really, as effects happen, like as you crash into cars, or other actions could cause more dice rolls, that'll determine kind of that randomness to see who takes the worst of the crash, and if any debris flies off, and that debris could hit somebody else and take them out. If you hit a hazard, those hazards have different various effects in dice rolling. It's just crazy. I actually enjoyed this. I'm not normally into this style of game where it's a bunch of just zany randomness. But it met the theme really well, and it played quick enough that I really had a lot of fun with just the zany wackiness that was Thunder Road Vendetta. I'm glad I checked it out. And finally, my number 1, my favoriteest game from June 2024 is another game that I've been eyeballing for quite some time, and finally was able to get my hands on. Newton. This is a game I didn't know even a lot about, other than it was a highly thought about Euro game when it came out. I haven't heard much about it since then. But I enjoyed it. So again, you're playing card actions, and you can move around the map, or you can take, build up your library tableau area. You can draft more action cards, which you're going to need to do, because at the end of every round, you're going to bury a card. So if you bury your draft cards action, you're not going to be able to draft more cards, and you're going to not have actions at the end of the game. So every other round or so, you are going to need to draft at least one more card to kind of replenish your tool set of actions. You've got resources you're managing, things you're collecting along the way, criteria you got to meet to get to certain places on the different boards. I think there's 2 different boards that you're kind of working your way up, like a science track, and then a map of areas that you're going out and exploring. I'm real bad. I don't pay much attention to the theme anyway, so I'm going to be bad explaining what the theme behind all these are. But basically, you're moving around a map, or you're moving up like a sciencey track with different branches, and you can never go backwards. So you're working to get more of the workers out so you can hit up the various branches. And this is a game, I think, and I haven't figured it out completely. I've only played it a couple times solo. But I think it's a game where you need to really focus 1 or 2 actions, and I think that's been kind of my problem, is I've been trying to do a little of this, a little of that, and I don't think that's the real objective of this game. I think you need to work with what works best together with your current layout, and building those actions up that complement each other. But it's another tight action selection game. I really like these games where you've got limited action space, and you're playing those out the best you can to make things happen. So that is Newton, that game I've been eyeballing for quite a while and finally got to play. I have really been enjoying that. My number 1 from June of 2024. that's the list. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. Let me know what you've been playing in the comments below. And if you're not a subscriber already, please think about hitting the subscribe button. It'll really help me out and keep these videos coming to you in the future. I will see you in the next video. Bye.